So we're going to continue through our Sermon on the Mount, which we are crawling through. This week, when I had arranged this series out, I had originally had, you've heard it said, don't take oaths. You've heard it said, love your enemy as yourself. And you've heard it said, an eye for an eye. I had all three of those smashed into 1 week. And I looked at Ash and I said, that's never going to happen. So those are now 3 weeks. And we've lost a series that was coming later in the year. Because we're crawling through Matthew. I think this is a really important thing here, crawling through this Sermon on the Mount. We're going to slow down and look at these a little more carefully today. So to bring us all up to speed, Matthew, right, is introducing this message of the kingdom through Jesus, right? This is our theme we've been tracing the whole time we've gone through Matthew and Genesis and Hebrews, this idea of the coming of the kingdom. That's what this chapter is flushing out. He's been going around inaugurating this kingdom of God, this rule and reign of God, right? This upside down world where we're driving on the wrong side of the road, and this new way of living, right? This old covenant is going to be rewritten on the hearts. Jeremiah 31 people, making them a new covenant people. This is this introduction to all that, this rule and this reign. The good news of the kingdom. Are we up to speed? We good? Great. The good news of that kingdom, right? It's rediscovering what the humanity is in Jesus' kingdom. So Jesus has come to reclaim what human beings were made for. So think back to our Genesis series. We were made in the image of God to be gardeners, is the image that I used. And we're getting this reimagination of it in this now broken world that is out of this broken garden. And so he's taking these laws that were given and he's fulfilling them to give this portrait of what a renewed human heart looks like in this kingdom. That's our up to speed. So what he's done is taken an Old Testament quote. You've heard it said, but I tell you. So the first ones, he said, you've heard it said, don't murder, which is from the 10 Commandments. All right, we're alive. We're our hearts are beating together, right? And he says, he doesn't change it, right? He doesn't say, don't murder, but I tell you, go ahead and, Jason Voorhees, whoever is in your way, right? No, he says, but what it actually means is this, right? Last week, don't commit adultery. That's also from the... Good. Shirley Harmon's alive in the front row. But then it moved on and he said, but I tell you, he didn't say, go ahead and do whatever you want. But he said, actually, there's a brokenness upstream in the heart of these issues, right? Just harboring hatred for someone is eliminating their humanity. And just harboring lust towards someone, that little movie in your head, is damaging their humanity. So we're rewriting what this means. And so it's a really intense part of this series. I said a couple weeks ago, he's going to get in the nitty-gritty of things. And so we're going to continue that today, this distinctness in human relationships, to see what the high value of the ethic of the kingdom is, right, which we've been referencing. He says, love God with all of our hearts, our minds, our strengths, and love your neighbor as yourself. Or as I say it, know God, love neighbor, live justice forever. This is this new ethic he's getting out. Everything about this kingdom is reworking what happened. So I want to use this image of the iceberg to kind of help us orient last week into this week a little bit. So, I don't know if you know this. I'm pretty sure everyone does at this point. What you see above is significantly smaller than what you see below, right? We know this about icebergs. They're like significant mass of the iceberg is actually underneath the water. I forget what the exact ratio is, but the next picture I'm going to show you, it's not of this iceberg, but it is, don't click yet. It is significantly difficult to find a not computer-generated image of an iceberg above and below the water when you type those into image finders. So I wanted to find a real picture. So the next one is just a scuba diver who took a picture of an iceberg underneath the water, and there's a scuba diver next to the iceberg. The first person to find the scuba diver in the picture gets a high five. Okay, ready, Blake? Go! You got it? Where is he?
In the corner.
Yeah, so this is a full-size human being in a scuba suit. I would, let's take the average height of a human person, somewhere between 5'5" and 5'10", depending on nationality and sex, right? So, big, okay, humongous, comparatively. Here's your, I'll just do like an air one, because that's it, perfect. Okay, they're huge beneath the surface. Keep this idea in mind. What you see above, what you're visualizing, is a significantly smaller portion than what's really going on underneath. This is the idea of the iceberg theory of anything. Batman being Bruce Wayne, great, surface. Lots of people read the comics, get that. It's the weird nitty-gritty that only like certain people get to notice that makes up a huge portion of it. And so keep this in mind. The relationship of above and below is there. You can't really predict the size of an iceberg by what you see above the water, right? Big photograph like this, it's the idea of perception. That you have to view things above and below to get a clue to the size of it. So keep this idea in mind. What's above does not represent what's below. So Jesus isn't interested in just simple behavior modification. Not just the stuff, go back one, Blake. He's not just like, right, don't murder, congratulations. You accomplished 5% of the mass of the iceberg. You with me? But what do you get? Next one. Underneath, the stuff in the heart. That's all down here. Don't even hate a person. That's a bigger chunk, isn't it? Okay, so we're going to continue that idea today. It's not just simple behavior modification. It's moving towards the root causes of these issues that exhibit these surface behaviors. So he's going to continue that today by one that I think we're going to feel pretty good about at first. When we try to, I'll just read it. Here we go. Matthew 5, 33 through 37. If you'd like to pull to it, we're going to go back and forth for a while. That is Hebrews. That's not helpful. Matthew 5, 33 through 37. I'm going to read the whole thing and then we'll go back and forth. Here we go. Again, you've heard it said to people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows that you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And don't answer by your head, for you can't even make one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. This might be the first week so far where I finished reading it and you said, I don't even remember the last time I swore an oath. I got it. This is a good one. I've got this figured out, right? Maybe if you were on a jury. Anyone serve on juries recently? Okay, good, right? But this isn't something you do a lot. Anyone remember the last time you put your hand and swore an oath? Anyone vivid recollection of the last time? Mine was the last time I served. How soon was it? Oh, a couple weeks ago. So, right, but it's just not common. You're not routinely going in, and you might eventually, right? But the last time I did it, I was serving on jury duty, right? Forever ago. I had to go in and I didn't even get on the pool. They never take pastors to juries. It's like the get out of jail free card. They find out your profession, they go, just go home. Therapists usually too. They don't like you guys on there. You're not too nice, you know? Okay, so, right, we've got this figured out. But it's something that was very common and very significant in Jesus' day. But the examples of it are kind of this surface phenomenon. So I'm going to try to orient ourselves with a surface phenomenon of it, and then we're going to move into the deeper issue that it gets to with that last line about this truthful, honest representation of ourselves. Okay? So he kind of quotes from the Old Testament law, like he's done, but he's not quoting from a specific law or verse. So unlike going from the Ten Commandments, we're not exactly there. He's using language from a handful of passages in the Old Testament about this idea of swearing an oath. So I'm going to paint a scenario of an oath swearing like Jesus would know and these people would have known in their day, and we're going to flush it out, okay? So let's say you're a Jewish farmer. Everyone say, I'm a Jewish farmer. Like now, but you mean it though. There it is. And you live outside of Jerusalem and you've got a big grove of olive trees. Lots of olive trees. And you got a neighbor who's also this olive farmer. And for one reason or another, this guy doesn't like you. Just hates your guts. You grow better olives than him, whatever it is. Anyway, he really doesn't like you. Difficult relationship. Really difficult relationship with his neighbor. No one in here has ever had a difficult relationship with a neighbor ever in their life, so it's hard to imagine what this would be like. But you got a neighbor, really difficult, and one day your neighbor, one of his donkeys, the hard-working donkey that does all the work on his olive farm, goes missing. And you know he hates you, and he thinks for sure he's going to tell everyone you took it. You with me? I know my neighbor took it. You already know this is coming. So he goes to local elders, and he makes an accusation against you. He says, my neighbor stole my donkey. I know he stole my donkey. In fact, I even saw him do it. I'm telling the truth. I saw him steal the donkey. I swear by the name of Yahweh himself and everything that's holy in Jerusalem that I saw him steal the donkey. You with me? what's happening in this story with this neighbor? Why does the neighbor feel like why does the neighbor be like, I swear on Yahweh's name himself and on everything holy in Jerusalem? Why does he do that? Why couldn't he just say, I saw him do it, let's investigate? Why does he appeal to the name of God? Why is he dragging God into it? Ooh, appealing to the authority in God's name, right? He uses God's name somehow by associating God's good and holy truthfulness. That makes his claim more important. You with me? It's more serious. This is just your crabby neighbor, right? You don't know exactly why he's doing it, but it's a good idea. So the elders investigate. Turns out you didn't actually steal the donkey. Shocker. His cousin came, borrowed it for a project, forgot to tell him, and anyway. So what's happened now in the public sphere of this accusation? Right? Your neighbor has taken the name of God and associated it with his own crookedness and insecurities. You following me? So he's taken the name of Yahweh in vain and defiled it by swearing an oath, using God's name to strengthen his oath. So they were given laws of Israel to avoid and regulate this thing from happening. Because you can't take God's holiness and associate it with something awful. We'll get there. You can't do that. So they make all these laws to keep from happening. The most famous verse of the Bible about this idea actually comes from the Ten Commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord in vain. Ooh. This is what that's getting at. Taking the name of God in vain. You don't swear falsely by the name. And so therefore you defile God's name. Don't swear with God's name. This is what this comes now. So in our culture, right, swearing has to do with like foul language, right? And then using God's name or in foul language or whatever. But that's not what it is getting at in this section, right? It's what the neighbor did. He swore an oath and used God's name to somehow bolster that importance. The whole point of taking God's name in vain is to take that holiness and uniqueness and goodness and associate it with the brokenness, lying, cheatingness. Bad. Can't do that. You with me? That's a distortion of truth. So what happens when God's name is associated with human crookedness, right? It defiles it. It's an abuse of his reputation. So all these laws were given in ancient Israel, right, to not use God's name in your oath. But this is what happened. Okay, so people didn't use God's name in their oath anymore. But what they did develop was a whole culture about different practices and things that you could swear by that were associated with God, but they weren't actually his name. And so Jesus actually names a few of them. You can swear by heaven, you can swear by earth, you can swear by Jerusalem, you can swear by your head, all these things, right? So this created all these other debates. And in Jewish literature at this time, among rabbis, what counts as a genuine oath where you really have to be sure you're telling the truth to swear by it, and what like could you swear by it and not be true and it doesn't really break this commandment. So Matthew 23, they get into it a little bit. The Pharisees are getting into the legalism about it, and the Pharisees say, if someone swears by the temple, it doesn't mean anything. But if they swear by the gold in the temple, that's just as bad as using God's name. You with me? Like, as long as it's not the gold in the temple. But anyone, they're bound to that oath that they swear by the gold. I swear by the temple he stole my donkey. Totally fine. I swear by the temple gold he stole my donkey. Well, now you're breaking that commandment. You were following this very legalistic sense of this whole thing. If it turns out you're wrong, well, at least I didn't swear by the gold of the temple. That would have been really embarrassing, right? So Matthew 26, 16 through 22. I don't even want to read it. That's what that comes from. That's this practice, right? I can't use God's name. I'll just use the things that are associated, and I'll still accomplish the goal. I'll bring weight to my accusation without actually breaking the commandment. Which is to make people impressed that you are for sure telling the truth. It's just trying to evade and use like language loopholes to still draw attention to God's reputation. Even if you're dodging and using these little loopholes, this is what Jesus is getting at. This is the catch. Jesus is a good teacher, right? I said he might be the best teacher ever. Everything's got 5 avenues in and 1 avenue out, and the avenue out actually leads you back to the entrance, and you have to make decisions again. He's a great teacher. Everyone repeat after me here. It's God's space. What is God's space? Everything, oh goodness me, right? Is my head, is the temple, is the Bible, is earth, space, the universe, the gold in the temple, the statues, the table, the bread, it's all his anyway, right? This is what he's getting at. Anything you could possibly swear by is a part of what God authored into this strange world that was spoken into creation. So if you're swearing by God's name, or if you're swearing by stuff, you are swearing by his name. You with me? This is his catch he throws in here. Heaven, earth, your head, the toes, it doesn't matter, right? There's nothing you could possibly swear by that's not brought in by it. So here's what Jesus does. He gets into this discussion about what can I swear by, what can I do? And he just says, it's enough. In the kingdom, it's about simple, honest, truthful recognition. It's about relationships, right? We're all talking about fracturing relationships through anger, through lust. This is all this one. We're getting to this fracturing relationships now through untruthfulness. Thank you, AJ. AJ says, what if you swear... Oh, gosh. I didn't read it till just now. We'll get there, though. We'll get there. It undermines and corrodes human relationships when you swear by things. You with me? You following? Great. Dallas Willard, amazing theologian. I'm just going to read this paragraph. He has a study over this one section of Matthew 5 here. And he puts it so eloquently, it's like, I don't even bother. It's Dallas Willard. You ready? The essence of swearing that Jesus targets, it's about invoking something or someone else, especially God, to make your words seem more significant. So the aim is to impress others with the seriousness of your piety so that you get what you want. It's a device of manipulation that's designed to override the judgment of others in order to possess them for our purpose. It's manipulation. Jesus says it's evil. Instead of loving and honoring others with truthfulness, the intent is to get your way by verbal manipulation of the thoughts and the choices of others. Thank you, Dallas. This is not a first century Jewish culture thing where you swear and whatever, right? The root issue here, right? We're getting past, right? It's not just don't murder, don't be angry, don't just commit adultery, also don't lust after anything. This is where the root of the issue upstream into the heart is how you present your yes and your no. It's how you present yourselves in false presentations. We don't live in ways that are truthful with each other. And the best way I can think of it is like this, the smoke screen, the like false pretense that's put up to convince people of something is commercials. Red Bull does not give you wings. If I could drink all the Red Bull in the world and I'm never going to jump out of the atmosphere and parachute or whatever. Like the guys who do the Red Bull air races where they like build their own aircraft or whatever, I'm not going to drink a Red Bull and suddenly become an aeronautical engineer. Right? I'm not going to drink a Red Bull and suddenly skateboard better than everybody else. You with me? But this is the whole thing. I want to be like Mike. Boy, if I just had Nike, or who is it? He has his own shoe brand now. But you remember, be like Mike, get his shoes, right? Air Jordans, like I could jump forever, right? It's you with me? It's a false pretense, getting you to believe something by associating it with something else. Red Bull plus superstar athletes equals I can become a superstar skateboarder. You follow me? When you're using something else, this is this smoke screen to present, right? Whether it's you or what you're doing in the best positive light, it's putting on a show for other people. And Jesus says that absolutely runs against this core ethic of the kingdom, because when you're doing that, you're not honoring the person's ability to know you. You're not being honest and truthful about your own weaknesses and flaws. This is about a false representation of ourselves to each other. A community of human beings that are moving towards this kingdom, right? This healthy, loving relationship. This might actually be the greatest obstacle within the community. The fact that we're constantly hiding from each other through the words and the smoke screens and the false faces we put up. This isn't just about first century oath practices in Judaism and whether or not the temple gold of the temple is more holy. This is about the habit that we do all the time. How many of you have been in a conversation before and you start to notice the pattern a person talks in? They mention, they're like, I can't even think of it, like, I was driving the other day and I was talking to Elon Musk, obviously, or I was talking to, I can't think of anybody famous. Somebody give me somebody who's famous. Taylor Swift. I was writing a song the other day, and Taylor walked in. She was like, this song is so good, man. And so Taylor and I, we were flying, right? Oh, Taylor Swift. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. Yeah, Taylor Swift and I know each other, obviously, right? You with me? This name drop. You with me? If I drop the name, I have the associate. Like I'm right there. So I was hanging out the other day, and wouldn't you know it, Peyton Manning comes in, and he tells me I'm the funniest guy he's ever seen, right? Okay. Why do people do that, right? Is it to sound more impressive or important? Like they weave it into a speech, and you know, so-and-so last week, it could be that they really, really love Taylor Swift and you know the opinion, and they appreciate it for what they are. But odds are, what happens in a name drop is they're using that person. You with me? They're using them to elevate their own thoughts and their own actions in the conversation. And that's not honoring that person as a divine image-bearing human. That's using that relationship and borrowing from it to somehow bolster how you perceive me. I want to come across as more impressive, so it's an embellishment. This is the one that I think is funny. You know the old grandpa you went fishing with grandpa when you were like 8, and he caught like the smallest fish you've ever seen in your whole life. It's like, you know, you couldn't even, if the DNR saw you, they'd be like, you have to throw that one back. It's a baby. But when you're like 10 or 11, he goes, you remember we caught that thing? It was like, brr. You with me? Every year the fish gets bigger and bigger. You with me? This is embellishment over and over. This is the image I get in my head, this slow embellishment that just distracts by what the truth really is. Grandpa's fish, that's what I think of. The airbrush presentation of ourselves. This is a very human thing. Just like being angry. Just like noticing an attractive person. We talked about that last week. This is a human thing. It's going to happen. You with me? Jesus is talking about how we use those words to hide from each other and deceive each other. And it might be so deeply rooted that the iceberg of that goes so deep that we don't actually notice we do that anymore. But you might catch yourself, or somebody else might catch you on it, and in that moment, you have a chance. You have like a real chance to be you and be truthful. It's a real chance. You get moments. There's countless of non-religious examples of this. When I teach, so I start, in just a couple weeks, I start teaching Old Testament, and I'm already preparing, looking in the mirror and going, Phil, you do not know the answer to every question. It's okay to say, I have no idea, because people ask some weird questions. It's okay to say, I don't know. But there's that moment where you're like, I'm supposed to be in charge, I'm supposed to know all the answers, and you could start rambling and whatever, and it's like, it's better to just say, I don't know. That's the if you're like a teacher or whatever, or you do something in your profession, like maybe, I don't know, we'll just make something up. Maybe you like forecast weather or something. Sometimes it's okay to be like, I have no idea, right? Be like, it's gonna rain, I don't know, right? Or, AJ, I'm sure it's okay for you to say, I don't know. Right? I'm assuming a lawsuit would happen if you pretended to know things that you didn't. Right? It's okay to say, I don't know. Sometimes saying, I don't know is the hardest thing, because your pride takes a hit a little bit, doesn't it? But Jesus is giving us the ways that we use God in the language of God. This is about using God's name and our own religious vocabulary to do the same thing. This is where it's going to get fun. Yeah, perfect. Great. Using religious vocabulary to do the thing. How many of you have been in a conversation with someone, and they're a person of faith, they're a Christian, and they're talking to you about some decision that they've made, and they inevitably use language like this. Oh man, these were so fun to write down. Okay, here we go. Like, I just really hope. I've been praying about this. I feel like God's calling me to it. Or they might even say like, this is my favorite one. I have a real peace about this decision. And I love it because you would never say that about anything that's not religious, right? You would never like go to McDonald's and order a Big Mac, and right before you take a bite, be like, I have a real peace about ordering this Big Mac. I was praying about it, and it's just I have a real peace about this decision. Are you with me? This is the same. You're doing the same thing. You might not think it, but you're doing the same thing. Now get there, right? There are times with that, right? This person could really be honest and searching. I told this to Ashley. I said, I'm going to be like, I have a real peace about this. And blah, blah, blah. And she goes, that's what we told people about church planting. And I was like, I know. Sometimes it's truthful. Sometimes you really do sit and you sweat bullets and you go, I'm leaving my job. I don't care what, like, sometimes that really happens. You've been praying a long time and you're looking for input from people that are wiser and smarter than you. They're checking your motives. You're reflecting on scriptures. There are other times where if you're being really honest, I don't even know if anyone would say, I've been praying about this, that actually was really praying about it, right? Or I feel a real peace about this. God and I had a real wrestling match about this thing, right? It's a way of putting up a wall and you shut down the conversation right there because you don't want the other person's opinion anymore. Who's going to say no to, well, God called me to do it? All of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you're invoking, okay, you're right. You with me? That's the root issue. This is what Jesus is getting at. For some of us, we use religious language. We use Jesus and these phrases, and we're not honoring and loving that relationship. We're using it as a way to somehow make your agenda and decisions seem more holy and more sanctified. My neighbor stole my donkey. I know in God's name I did it. I'm making this decision. We had a conversation about it, and God told me this is what to do. You feel it. You feel it. You can get people to do what you want when you do things like that. It's a lot easier to control people than it is to love them and honor them. And to have their dignity and see their input. So I don't actually think this is one of those Sundays where you get to sit down and say, I'm doing really good on this because I haven't sworn an oath in quite a while. This is a lot deeper. What does that inner transformation actually look like for someone? Like, what does that heart transformation look like? So, right, not getting angry. What is that? To get to a place where the presentation of yourself and your purposes is just simple and honest. Where you don't have that need to like put up the fake wall, the smoke screen, I've been praying about this wall. How do we get there? Like how does that happen? This is what Jesus is trying to get us to reflect to on that last line, right? What kind of person does it take? What kind of person do I need to become so that I don't need to hide with the words I'm using? So that my yes is truly corresponds to who I am. That I don't feel the need to cover that. And it's that verbal cover-up that Jesus exposes that gets that issue, right? That somehow with words, just blabbing and talking and using that Jesus language, the name dropping, that hiding from each other, that's hiding the truth about what you are. So he says, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything else comes from evil. And here's the truth about why we do it. We're going to get really deep on the bottom of the iceberg now. I think the truth about why we do it, the truth about what really puts this wall up, comes down to one of my, again, we're going to go back to 1 John 4. I'm sorry, everyone. It's my favorite chapter in the whole Bible. But I think it's the same truth that we learned about the jerk you work with at work, or the bully you remember from the playground, or your mean neighbor who gets mad because your fence is within 5 inches of his property line, and that means you got to go on the other side and weed whack it, or else it's going to put no trespassing signs. And then, so you with me? You know who I'm talking about. It's the same truth deep down, all the way, that you learned about them at some point. The compensating for a deep fear and insecurity. You control and manipulate and present a version of yourself or themselves that's not true. Because if anyone knew about what their life was like, deep down, to the kind of person they thought they were, that no one would be friends with them, no one would speak to them, no one would love them. That word is called fear. Everyone say fear. Ooh. It's a tragic irony of human communities that what we want more than anything is to be in relationship, be known by each other. But we perpetually hide by how we lie and protect what's really deep down. We really want to be known. We really want to be accepted. We really want to be loved. We want to be in a circle. We want to have people. We want to be in a relationship. But I got to put a wall up and protect what's really deep down inside of me. How do you address your fear of just being totally insignificant and unimportant? That's a deep iceberg. So let's think about who Jesus is and what he's doing. We're gonna wrap up with 1 John 4. How does Jesus think? How does he address this issue, right? Okay, so remember what he's doing. He's going around, he's announcing the kingdom, he's throwing dinner parties and eating with like lepers and prostitutes and tax collectors and other sinners and other people. He's got them all in. He's inviting all the wrong people. The people who've been written off by the religious community. Think of the Beatitudes. No one's asking them about Rome. This is who he's bringing in. The Pharisees come like, why is he eating with the tax collectors and these sinners, right? He's got all these people coming in to these parties, all the wrong people. They've been written off. He has them sit down at banquets. He celebrates God's grace and forgiveness. Jesus makes the first move, just moving right into people's worlds and lives, and he announces forgiveness and grace and an invitation to come into the family of Jesus' people in this new kingdom. All the wrong people are being invited. And the apostles, when they reflect on this later on, what Jesus was doing, one word that is woven all throughout the entire New Testament that they come to describe this movement of Jesus and what he's doing. John puts it, 1 John 4 puts it so pretty I can't even imagine anyone writing it better. 1 John 4, this is my favorite chapter in the whole Bible. We're just going to read it again. 1 John 4. Not the whole thing. 1 John 4, 10 through 12. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us first and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. So the disciples, they reflect back on these encounters with Jesus as he inaugurates his kingdom. This word they use to describe everything about Jesus and what he did and what he stood for and how he brings relationships together is one word, and it's the word love. Say love. Jesus was God's love among us. Jesus was God's love that went and found people who were hiding and distorted and screwed up human beings and made this ridiculous offer that Jesus' life, that he lived as a human being, full of integrity and truth, is offered as a free gift. You're invited to the party. And as we go around and we hide behind the walls we put up, the facades, these lies, these untruths, these oaths that we take that aren't meaningful, right? We're hiding. John in that chapter puts it on, you're living dead. You're alive, but you're not really alive. Because you don't want to be known. To be known is to be loved. You're going around as a walking dead person because you're scared of being known. We don't ever let people in. We don't have relationships where we let anybody in. John calls that a form of living death. You're living, but you're not really alive for what God made you for. And so Jesus comes as this human that lives this life as the humans we were meant to be. He associates the people. He begins to remake the heart of all the things so that we can live through him. That not only be part of his life, but in his death, he covers over all of the huge messes that we've made and that we contributed to the world. God's purpose is not to let us go to hell. But the whole point is that he comes along and he actually does something that addresses that core issue in the heart, all the way upstream. A preemptive strike of unconditional love. It's not that we loved God, but that he loved us first. You with me? God didn't ask if we wanted Christ to come. He came among us in Jesus. 1 John 4:18. That's how he ends this up. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. So one of the truths in a disciple of Jesus is that when we truly reckon with who Jesus is, and you see what Jesus is doing with God's love, it diminishes the fear. What is it that causes us to hide from each other? It's the fear of being known. If they knew how blank, blank, blank I really was. If they knew deep down what I thought of blank, blank, blank. If they knew deep down blank, blank, blank. You with me? Fear about my worth and my value. John says God's love isn't like this mysterious, vaporous cloud out in the universe, right? But God's love was a real, concrete person, Jesus of Nazareth, who did and said those things on our behalf. And if you're willing to accept that as an act of true love, then God's permanent commitment to us, despite the deep flaws, despite the sins, despite the failures. He's committed to us. He sees the value and the worth in us as divine, image-bearing human beings. And John says, if you get that deep down into your bones, the very bottom of that iceberg, in your heart and your mind, it eliminates the fear. Because fear has to do with this. This is people outside of the faith. This is the thing they have the hardest time getting past right here. This sentence, I'm sure we've all thought it. Here we go. Has to do with this. This is what fear has to do with in the church, right? God is out to get me. Everyone say it. God is out to get me. If you've never thought that before, you are a more amazing person than I have ever been. God's out to get me. There's a lot of rules. I'm going to get trapped. Remember I talked about the paradox? There's no way I could ever possibly not be angry. That's clearly he's out to get me. This is a trip. I'm going to trip over this, right? Jesus has proved that wrong. What John is getting at is if you really reckon with who Jesus is, who cares what people think about you? Who actually cares? Not in like a bad way, right? Like it's not like don't go murder people. We'll cover that and all these other don't do that's, right? But in a healthy way, because your identity is not determined by what other people think about you. It's determined by this act of Jesus. The only way to address the huge scope, the deep surface of the iceberg, the lying, right, the very tip, these untruthful oaths, this verbal smokescreen, it's the tip of the iceberg. The issue, right, is how Jesus moves towards us. Beginning to continue in this habit of redeeming ourselves, of reminding ourselves of what is true.